Over the past month, I've been receiving a lot of social media ads from a website, Leet Resumes, which claim to offer free resume writing, and I decided that I wanted to check it out and see if it was something that was worthwhile. If you don't know who I am, my name is Philip McGee. I'm a physical therapist who works full-time in utilization review, and I also do resume reviews, practice interviews, and have my own course on getting into utilization review. So I thought that this would be interesting because there are a lot of people who struggle with getting their resume written, that maybe they've applied multiple times and haven't been able to get an interview, and unfortunately they just struggle to be able to get past that first hurdle to get an interview. And since Leet Resumes provides this service for free and they do request tips, I decided I'd submit my resume based on the last job that I applied for, which was an internal position. After I signed up, what it did was ask me a few different questions about my experiences and my hard skills, my education, the different accomplishments that I've had, and I submitted my resume to them, and I submitted that on a Monday evening, and by Wednesday evening, almost 48 hours afterward, I got my resume. So this was the resume that I received. I did black out some of the personal information for contacting me, but overall, my first impression, I knew that it was going to be a pretty simple, straightforward resume. I was a little bit surprised that it didn't have a career summary, where usually after your name and your title, or at least the job that you're applying for, there would be a career summary. I was a little bit surprised that it didn't have it because most of the templates now usually have that, but it did use a lot of keywords. If I was going to say anything as far as the biggest drawback, was that it asked for some of the titles that I was looking at for my future positions, different positions that I'd be applying for. And the first one that I put was learning and development, and I was actually surprised it didn't include the word learning anywhere in my resume or the word development. So I was a little bit surprised by that. Overall, I think they provided a clean resume. They put the bullet points and made sure that they had objective statements as often as they could. Now, one thing that I think, if I were to have submitted one of my older resumes, I wonder how much editing they really would have done. Overall, it seems like they took the resume that I had and they made a few changes to it, as far as always using bullet points for the statements instead of, sometimes I would have just a couple sentences. I would say the biggest change that they made to my resume was the technologies, certifications, and licenses, that they broke it down into all of those things in one section and summarized it pretty well on just a few lines. If I were to rate this on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being I wouldn't suggest this to my worst enemy, and 10 being you should do this right away, I would give it an 8, maybe 8.5. I think that they do a good job, especially if you're someone who's struggled to be able to write a clean resume that would be able to get you an interview. I do think the reasons why I score it lower, the biggest job that I was looking for was to go into learning and development, and they didn't include that in the resume. And then the other aspect, they did have a typo. I feel like I shouldn't have to proofread a resume that's already been written. On their website, for their frequently asked questions, they talk about how much you should be expected to tip under the what's the hidden cost. They say that if you take the amount of money that you would make in the thousands, so they give the example of $80,000, if you make that in a year, then the suggested tip is $40. You are asked to give the tip before you read the resume, though there is an option to not tip. I did think that it was a little strange that I couldn't look at the resume first before I submitted the tip, but I was going to pay them for their work. They do have a lot of resume examples if you wanted to see if this was something that you want to consider. I was actually pretty surprised in healthcare. They had a lot of different options, including a clinical liaison position, and you can look at it and see if that's something that you would want to go for. And they tell you different tips about how to write a resume specific to the job title. They also have higher level positions like a hospital administrator. You can click on that example and you can see what they did for that resume. And what's really nice is that they talk about what it is that would make a resume good. Even if you're not going to use Leet Resumes to write a resume, you can look at it for examples and to provide some information to write a better resume. It unfortunately doesn't have one for utilization review. I did mention that I do resume reviews and practice interviews, and you might be wondering, why am I doing a review on something that's cheaper than my services? And there's a couple reasons. One, I really want people to succeed, and I know there's a lot of people out there that struggle trying to get an interview after applying multiple times or spending months submitting applications, not getting any interviews. I want people to be able to have that resource, and some people just aren't able to afford my services. I do think my services for the resume review are a little bit different. I do spend some one-on-one time with anybody that signs up, and there are a few things that I do differently as far as how I recommend a resume to be written. But there is that option. But also, if you have found it helpful and Leet Resumes gets you an interview and you're interested in a practice interview, then that is an option that you can sign up for. But ultimately, I want everyone to be able to succeed. If you haven't checked out the website, you can download my free ebook on writing resumes. I will provide the link down in the description. Hopefully you found this information helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.